The wind howled like a wounded animal against the windows of the small, weathered house on Maple Ridge Road. Inside, Nia sat by the dying fire, wrapped in a thin shawl, trying to ignore the bitter cold seeping through the floorboards. Then came a sudden, frantic pounding on the door, sharp, desperate, echoing through the tiny cabin. Nia froze. The heavy iron fire poker slipped slightly in her trembling hands as she turned toward the noise. Her heart thudded so hard she could feel it in her throat. The pounding came again, louder this time, faster, more urgent. "Please." A man's voice shouted over the roaring storm, the accent distinct, sharp, and commanding despite the panic. "Please, my daughter needs help. She is fading." The sound of a deep male voice sent a jolt of panic through Nia's chest. She took a step back, clutching the poker tighter, eyes locked on the door. For a moment, all she could hear was the storm, the wind tearing at the shutters. Then, through the frosted window pane, a dark shape moved. A man, broad-shouldered, hunched over something smaller. Nia's mind flashed back to that night a year ago. Another knock. Another stranger with a story about a broken-down car. She had opened the door, and by morning, her grandmother's jewelry box and her hidden cash were gone. She had sworn she would never make that mistake again. But then, a sound cut through the wind. A weak, rattling cough from outside. A child's cough. Nia's grip on the poker loosened. Her pulse still raced, but her fear began to twist into compassion. She moved closer to the door, peering through the frost. The man shifted, and she saw the little girl clearly, limp in his arms, her face pale even through the blur of glass. "Please," the man's voice cracked, raw and pleading. "She is burning up. I have nowhere else to go." Nia stood there, heart hammering. Every rational thought begged her to walk away, but the voice of her grandmother whispered from years ago, "Child, when someone needs help and you can give it, you give it. Don't let fear make you small." With one deep breath, she turned the lock and threw open the door. The cold hit her like a physical blow. The man stumbled forward, snow clinging to his jet-black hair. But it was his attire that made Nia pause. He was not dressed for a casual drive. He was wearing a sharp, tailored black mafia suit and a crisp white-collared shirt, now soaked and clinging to his chest, the top buttons undone. Even covered in snow, he radiated an aura of dangerous power, the kind of presence that usually commanded rooms in high-rise buildings or backroom dealings. "Thank you," he gasped, his dark eyes wide. "Thank you." "Get inside before we both freeze," Nia said, stepping back but keeping the poker raised. He carried the child to the couch by the fire, moving with a desperate tenderness that contradicted his sharp, lethal appearance. The girl's skin was flushed with fever, her breathing shallow. Nia locked the door, never taking her eyes off the stranger. "What is your name?" she demanded. "Ji-hoon," he said, his voice rough. "I am Ji-hoon. This is my daughter, Hannah." "Well, Ji-hoon, you better not make me regret this. Sit there. Don't touch anything. I have my phone right here, and I will call the police." Ji-hoon nodded, too exhausted to argue, though a flicker of irony passed through his eyes at the mention of the police. A man of his stature, a powerful Korean mafia boss, usually avoided the police for very different reasons. "I understand. I am not here to cause trouble. I just need Hannah to be safe." He peeled off his soaked suit jacket, revealing a white dress shirt that was nearly transparent with wetness, sticking to a muscular frame covered in tattoos that disappeared under his sleeves, markings of the syndicate. He wrapped the jacket around Hannah, but it was cold and damp. Nia watched him, studying his face. It was a hard face, angular and handsome, with eyes that looked like they had seen too much darkness. But as he looked at his daughter, the ruthless expression of a mafia boss melted into pure, terrified love. "I have towels," Nia said, lowering the poker slightly. "Stay there." She backed toward the linen closet, keeping her eyes on him. She grabbed an armful of towels and returned, placing them on the arm of the couch. "Take them slowly." Ji-hoon reached for the towels, moving with a deliberate, calculated grace, the movements of a man trained to strike, now repurposing his hands for care. "Thank you. I know you are taking a risk. You do not know who I am." "I can heat up some soup," Nia said, ignoring his comment. "That's all I'm offering." "That is more than enough," Ji-hoon said quietly, beginning to dry Hannah's hair with gentle hands. Nia went to the kitchen, but positioned herself where she could still watch them. She dumped a can of chicken noodle soup into a pot. As she stirred, she glanced back. Ji-hoon was murmuring to the girl in Korean, a soft, rhythmic sound. The tenderness in his movements reminded Nia of her own father, a man who had worked himself to the bone to keep their family afloat. It was strange to see such gentleness from a man who looked like he could snap a neck without blinking. The power had been out for 3 hours. The only light came from the fireplace and 2 emergency candles. The house felt small, intimate. Hannah sipped the soup slowly, her small hands wrapped around the mug. Ji-hoon helped her, his intense gaze softening every time she swallowed. "Why were you out in this storm dress like that?" Nia asked finally. "You look like you were heading to a funeral. Or a very serious meeting." Ji-hoon looked up, his face drawn. "Business. I was in the city. There are complications in my line of work. I received a call that Hannah was ill at her boarding school, 2 hours north. I went to get her immediately. I thought we could make it back before the storm worsened. I was arrogant. In my world, I am used to controlling everything. I forgot I cannot control the weather. Where is her mother?" Nia asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's not my business." "It is all right," Ji-hoon said, his voice devoid of emotion, his eyes darkening with a memory of violence and loss. "She died 3 years ago. It has been just us since then." Nia felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry. I lost my father 5 years back. It leaves a hole that doesn't quite fill up." Ji-hoon nodded slowly. "Hannah is strong. Stronger than me. But nights like this, I feel I am failing her. I command thousands of men, yet I cannot stop the snow." "You're here," Nia said firmly. "You're keeping her warm. That's not failing." They fell into a silence that was less tense now. Hannah finished her soup and curled up against her father's side. Ji-hoon stroked her hair, his eyes heavy. Nia walked to the back room and returned with a thick, patchwork quilt. "Here. It was my grandmother's. It's warm." Ji-hoon looked at the quilt, then at Nia. For a moment, the guarded expression of the Mafia Boss cracked. "This is handmade. Valuable. She needs to stay warm," Nia said. "Take it." Ji-hoon accepted the quilt. His hand brushed Nia's as he took it, and a spark of electricity seemed to jump between them. He held her gaze for a second too long. "Thank you. You have a kind heart, Nia. In my life, kindness is a rare currency." "Just get through the night," she said, looking away. She settled into the armchair, determined to stay awake. But the warmth of the fire and the rhythm of the storm lulled her. The last thing she heard was Ji-hoon humming a melody, deep and mournful, as he watched over his child like a sentinel guarding a treasure. Nia woke to the smell of coffee. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside buried in white silence. In the kitchen, Ji-hoon stood by the stove. His black mafia suit trousers were pressed as best as they could be, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faint, intricate scars that told stories of knife fights and survival. "Hannah is still asleep," he said softly as Nia sat up. "I made coffee. I hope you do not mind." "I found the beans." Nia rubbed her face. "You know how to use an old percolator." "I learned to make do with very little a long time ago," Ji-hoon said. He handed her a cup. Black, with a tiny pinch of sugar. "I saw you do it last night with your tea." Nia raised an eyebrow, taking a sip. "It was perfect. You're observant." "In my line of work, observation is survival," he said darkly, then offered a small, disarming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. They were snowed in. The roads were buried under 2 feet of drift. Ji-hoon stepped out to the porch and made a call on a satellite phone he had pulled from his jacket. He spoke in rapid, commanding Korean. Nia couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the tone of a king, of a powerful Korean mafia boss issuing orders that would be followed without question. "My driver will be here as soon as the plows clear the main road," he told her, returning inside. "It may be late afternoon." As the day wore on, an unexpected domesticity settled over the cabin. Ji-hoon, the man who ran an empire of shadows, insisted on helping. He split firewood behind the house, swinging the axe with lethal precision. Nia watched from the window. He moved like a fighter, balanced and powerful. He fixed a loose hinge on the bedroom door and tightened the wobbly handle on the kitchen cabinet. "You're handy for a man in a $1,000 suit," Nia observed. I grew up on the streets of Seoul before I rose to power, Ji-hoon said, not looking up from the hinge. If you could not fix it, you did not have it. The wealth, the suits, the title of boss. That came later. Much later. By afternoon, Hannah was sitting up, coloring with some old pencils Nia had found. She drew a picture of the house, with a woman in the doorway surrounded by yellow light. That is you, Hannah said shyly, handing the drawing to Nia. You saved us. Nia felt her throat tighten. It's beautiful, sweetie. I'll keep it forever. When the convoy finally arrived, it shattered the peace of the afternoon. These were not normal cars. 3 black, armored SUVs tore through the snow. 6 men in identical dark suits leaped out. They didn't just walk, they formed a defensive perimeter. When they saw Ji-hoon, they bowed precisely 90 degrees, shouting "Boss" in unison. Nia stepped back, eyes widening. This wasn't just a rich businessman. This was something else entirely. Ji-hoon waved them back with a sharp gesture of his hand. He turned to Nia on the porch. The air was crisp and cold. Thank you, he said, for seeing us as people. For opening the door. Who are you, really? Nia asked, looking at the bowing men. I am a man who owes you a debt, Ji-hoon said, dodging the question. And I always pay my debts. Ji-hoon reached into his jacket and pulled out a sleek, black business card with gold lettering. Kim Trading Corporation and a private number. Nothing else. If you ever need anything, he said, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Anything at all. You call me. I won't need anything, Nia said, her pride flaring, though she was shaken by the display of power. Life is long, the Mafia Bos said softly. And storms come when we do not expect them. He looked at her for a moment longer, as if memorizing her face, then turned. He walked to the waiting convoy, and his men instantly parted to let him through, closing the door with reverence. 3 weeks later, Nia's world collapsed. It started when the home health agency she worked for lost its county contract. Nia was laid off effective immediately. 2 days later, the diner where she picked up evening shifts closed down due to the owner's bankruptcy. Nia hustled. She applied everywhere. But the bills piled up faster than the callbacks. The heating bill came due. The roof developed a leak. She sold her grandmother's china. Then the dining table. Then her father's tools. 6 weeks later, Nia sat in her cold kitchen, staring at a shut-off notice from the electric company. She had $12 in her bank account and a jar of peanut butter in the pantry. Her pride had kept her going, but pride couldn't heat the house. She remembered the black card. She had almost thrown it away, terrified of what Ji-hoon represented, but something had made her keep it in the junk drawer. She dialed the number, her hands shaking. Kim Trading, a woman answered, her voice cold and professional. I need to speak to Ji-hoon, Nia stammered. Mr. Kim is not available. He is in a meeting with the elders. May I ask what this is regarding? Tell him it's Nia. From Maple Ridge Road. There was a click, then silence. 10 seconds later, the line opened, and a deep voice cut through. Nia? The concern in his voice was immediate, stripping away the cold persona of the Mafia Boss. I'm sorry to bother you, she whispered, tears finally spilling over. I didn't know who else to call. I'm in trouble. Are you hurt? His voice dropped an octave, dangerous and sharp. Who is it? Give me a name, and I will handle them. No one touches you. No one hurt me. I lost my job. The power is getting cut off tomorrow. I have no food. She heard him curse softly in Korean, a sound of frustration. Stay there. Do not move. I am coming. Ji-hoon, I just need a job reference or maybe. I am coming. The line went dead. 90 minutes later, the convoy of black SUVs pulled into her driveway again. Ji-hoon stepped out, looking furious and worried, flanked by his enforcers. He didn't come empty-handed. His men carried boxes, not just groceries, but gourmet meals, staples, cases of water. He walked into her cold kitchen, his expensive shoes clicking on the floorboards, and looked around at the empty shelves. He looked at Nia, huddled in her coat. Why did you wait so long? He asked gently, stepping close to her. He waved his men out of the room, leaving them alone. He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. I didn't want to be a burden, she said. You saved my daughter, he said intensely. You are never a burden. They sat at the small table, eating the warm food he had brought. Nia told him everything: the layoffs, the rejections, the fear. I have a proposition, Ji-hoon said. I am starting a foundation. The Hanol Initiative. It is focused on community outreach in the inner city and rural areas. I need a director. Nia shook her head. I'm a health aide, Ji-hoon. I don't know how to run a foundation. And I know who you are. Or at least, I know you aren't just a trader. Ji-hoon paused. He leaned forward. You are right. I am a mafia boss, Nia. My business is complicated. It is built on power and shadows. That is exactly why I need you. Why? Because my world is cold. It is transactional. I want to build something that is real. Something clean that has nothing to do with the syndicate. I saw how you cared for a stranger's child. That is the spirit I need. I can't move to the city. You can work from here. I will set up the office. The salary is $80,000 a year, plus benefits. Nia gasped. That's too much. It is what you are worth, he said simply. Take the job, Nia. Let me open a door for you. Let me do something good with the money I have made. Nia took the job. And she worked harder than she ever had in her life. She learned quickly. She organized food drives that preserved people's dignity. She set up job training programs that actually partnered with local businesses. She was fierce, compassionate, and unstoppable. Ji-hoon was true to his word. He funded the program, but he let her run it. However, he visited often. Ostensibly for site updates, but they would spend hours talking in her small office. He told her about his childhood, about the hard choices he had made to survive, about rising to become a mafia boss to protect his own. He never hid the truth from her anymore. Nia understood the violence he kept at bay, the dangerous men he commanded. But with her, he was just Ji-hoon. He was gentle. He made her laugh. One evening, 6 months in, they were leaving a community center in the city. A rival businessman, Councilman Thorne, had been criticizing the program in the press. Thorne was a corrupt man who knew exactly who Ji-hoon was. Thorne confronted them on the sidewalk, flanked by reporters. Ms. Williams, Thorne sneered. Enjoying the gangster's money? You're just a token. A pretty face to hide the dirt of a Korean mafia boss. Nia froze, the cameras flashing. Ji-hoon stepped forward, blocking Nia from view. The air around him suddenly turned terrifyingly cold. He didn't shout. He just adjusted his cuff, looking at Thorne with dead, shark-like eyes. Councilman, Ji-hoon said, his voice low but carrying a threat that made the other man flinch. You would be wise to choose your next words very carefully. Accidents happen so frequently in this city, even to politicians. Thorne paled, realizing he had pushed a mafia boss too far in public, and scurried away. Nia grabbed Ji-hoon's arm as they walked to the car. Don't. I can fight my own battles. We fight him with results, not threats. Ji-hoon looked down at her, the darkness of the underworld receding from his eyes. You are better than me, Nia. You are the light in this. I am just the shadow that protects you. Then stay in the light with me, she whispered. The real test came a year later. The board of directors of Ji-hoon's parent company, the grim-faced elders of the criminal syndicate back in Seoul, demanded the foundation be cut. They said it was drawing too much attention to their legitimate fronts, that it was a waste of resources. Ji-hoon summoned Nia to his office in the city. It was a glass fortress high above the streets, guarded by armed men. They are pulling the funding, he said, his back to her, looking out over the city he ruled. What? We have helped 300 families. Nia cried. We can't just stop. The syndicate does not care about families. They care about anonymity and profit, he turned to face her. I have resigned from the board of the syndicate's legitimate front. Nia stared. You walked away? Can a mafia boss just walk away? I separated the foundation. It is now independent. I have put my personal fortune, my own money, not the family's money into it. It is smaller, but it is ours. No one can touch it. No one can shut it down. Ji-hoon, that's millions of dollars. You risked your position with the elders for this. He walked around the desk and stood before her. I did not do it for the foundation. I did it for you. I could not watch you lose the thing you built. I would burn my empire down before I let you fail. Nia looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the man who had knocked on her door in a blizzard, the father who loved his daughter, the man who had saved her life. We have to testify, she said suddenly. The state is looking at a grant bill. If we get it, we don't need the syndicate's money at all. We can be self-sufficient. The hearing was grueling. Nia sat before the committee, feeling small. But when she spoke, her voice rang out with the strength of her ancestors. She didn't use jargon. She told stories. She told them about the mechanic who got his tools back, the mother who found childcare. She told them about the night of the storm. We judge people by their titles, she told the senators, glancing at the press who called her partner a criminal. By their clothes. By where they come from. But character is what you do when the storm hits. This program gives people a shelter from the storm. It gives them a chance to be who they really are. She looked at Ji-hoon, sitting in the back row, surrounded by his security detail, watching her with intense pride. I learned that from a stranger who is no longer a stranger, she added. They got the grant. Winter returned to Maple Ridge Road. 2 years had passed since that first knock. The house was warm, renovated, but still cozy. There was a knock at the door. Nia smiled. She didn't need a poker this time. She opened it to find Ji-hoon and Hannah. Hannah was taller now, healthy and glowing. She held a large canvas. For you, Hannah said. It was a painting. Real oil paint. It showed the cabin in the snow, but the light from the door wasn't just yellow, it was gold, spilling out and turning into flowers where it touched the snow. It's beautiful, Nia said, hugging the girl. Go get some cookies in the kitchen, sweetie. I made the ginger ones you like. Hannah ran off. Nia turned to Ji-hoon. He stood on the porch, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. He was wearing a heavy wool coat over his black mafia suit today. We did it, he said softly. The program is safe. The community is thriving. You did it, Nia corrected. No, he stepped closer, entering her personal space. The air crackled between them. I was lost in the dark, Nia. I had power, money, fear. I was a mafia boss with everything but a home. You opened the door. I'd open it again, she whispered. Nia, he said, his voice dropping to that rough, intimate register. I am tired of the city. I am tired of the noise and the violence. I find myself wanting to be where the light is. He reached out and took her hands. His grip was warm, solid. I love you, he said. The words hung in the cold air, stark and true. I have loved you since you threatened a mafia boss with a fire poker. Nia laughed, a wet, teary sound. I think I loved you since you made me coffee in my own kitchen. Ji-hoon leaned down and kissed her. It was a kiss like the storm, powerful, overwhelming, and inevitable. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. I am a dangerous man, Nia, he murmured. I will always be a mafia boss to the world. My world is not safe. Then we make our own world, she said fiercely. Right here. She pulled him inside and closed the door against the cold, shutting out the wind, the past, and the fear. Inside, there was only warmth, the smell of ginger cookies, and a love that had weathered the storm. Nia Williams, the woman who had once been ready to give up, looked at the man who ruled a dark empire and realized that the greatest power wasn't fear or money. It was simply the courage to open the door. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.